Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahushai, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahushai, Brakat Yahweh, Brakat Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rachak Wadash. God belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Zadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. On the pre-Shaman, this week's topic is either going to be called a response to the current state of mass confusion, or the elect will not be deceived about the macro. I think the first one is probably going to rolls off the tongue a little bit better, but what inspired this lesson? It's a response, to, and the reason I'm saying the title is fluctuating because I didn't get a chance to watch the lesson in its entirety, but it was a lesson that was put up by Elder Yeshua, but he was pretty much going into the current state of this mass confusion, discussing things like, the so-called white man pretty much being exposed, namely Amalek and the shit that they're doing over there in the state of Israel, and pundits that are doing it, whether it be Myron, Candace, you got Dan the Brazilian, it's pretty much going like pretty much Andrew Tate. You got so much people that are saying like, putting the spotlight on the state of Israel, the genocide they're doing, the mass manipulation they've done in the United States, and they don't really act in America's best interest per se, and then whether these people are synthetically bringing it out or organically bringing it out, they truly believe what they're saying. I like how Elder Yashua said it. It's really, we don't know, and that's the whole point of this lesson, really. It's like there's a lot of shit that we can only speculate. One thing you want to avoid, though, is to lean on your speculations as facts. Because there's just a lot of things we just don't 100% know for certain. But in terms of the macro, in terms of what the major prophecies that are going to take place, we know that for certain. All right, we know that the so-called white man is going to go into slavery. We know the so-called white man is Esau the devil. We know the microchip is coming, which is the RFID, which is the mark of the beast. The RFID microchips being mandated. Okay, we know that they try to make everything a central digital currency. So these sorts of things in the macro picture are things we know, but the micro we can only speculate, right? I mean, we get bombarded with different news, and another thing too is you have the mainstream media news, and then you have alternative media news. And one brother said, he hates mainstream media news, and this is my response to him. And it doesn't just apply to mainstream media, but even alternative media. And I told the brother, look, it's like perfume, right? You can sniff it, you can smell it, just don't fucking drink it, right? So you don't want to get too wrapped up in the shit you're hearing. Just because it's alternative news doesn't mean it's factual, doesn't mean I just bank on it because I didn't hear it on the mainstream news. Because again, that could also put you in a state of confusion, because mainstream media does have legit news sometimes, legit information. But if you just discard everything because it's mainstream media, guess what? You're now effectively the same as somebody who believes everything. You see what I'm saying? So just like I did that lesson, man, we have to use a heavy amount of discretion, and we might not be right on every single thing, because we are speculating, we are just men. But we know when it comes to macro prophecies, all right, according to the scriptures, we're going to give you the proper breakdown, because some with the apostles and elders on down, all right, the Spirit of the Lord is working with Great Millstone. Now, concerning the state of confusion, this is the book of Isaiah 47:1. It says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon." Okay, so the dust represents confusion. The American people are confused. And you might say to yourself, okay, why do they do this? Why do the elites have this in the news and that in the news and that and that? It's so you don't get from point A to point B, and that's how come I wasn't able to do my lesson yesterday, because, that mass shooter in Midtown, all right, he killed that officer, and that officer worked in the Bronx. So certain parts of the Bronx was blocked the hell up, and it was just a constant state of confusion. You didn't know how the fuck they weren't transparent. You was just driving all over the place, wasting hell of time. And I thought about it. I'm like, damn, this is the same fucking reason they want people, their minds pretty much wrapped up in the news and going all over the place, because you can't get from point A to point B. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what's what. That's how come my advice, you don't have to do this, but this is my advice. This is sort of what's help me with my little micro predictions of what's to take place is I keep it micro. You know, I try my best to say, okay, what are the facts? Okay, like for example, it's in the news now. Trump is raising tariffs increasingly on different countries that aren't willing to comply. But what did the mainstream media tell you? That's just going to cause the world to end. It's going to cause the market to crash. It's going to cause inflation, and you've seen none of those things happen. You know, the market's at all-time highs. We've seen it had a deflationary effect, and that was my particular stance on it, because, you know, I try not to get wrapped up in hype media. You know, things that are hyper sensationalized. It helps you. You just want to say, okay, what are the facts? All right, does tariffs control the money supply? It doesn't. Okay, so you know what I'm saying? So it's stuff like that. Like, think about it, right? Are planes still falling from the sky? Yes, right? But you're not seeing it in the news every second. But for some reason, it was like constant plane crash. So what I did was I looked. I was like, okay, well, how many plane crashes happened during this time period in presidential Trump's term and Biden's? Of course. Not of course, but it turns out it was more in Biden. So why were they putting it on the news? A state of confusion. You see what I'm saying? I'll give you another example. The drone thing, right? They got out of hand with that shit. Drones, these are aliens. Okay, so hold on. Why are there more drones? Oh, well, the FAA approved flying your drones at night, hence more sightings at night. Logical, simple. Sometimes, often too, brothers, the simplest solution is a solution. This shit could have you thinking more than what it is, and again, it all plays into the confusion. This is just high level witchcraft. But I say, as a lesson, we will get the big picture, right? All we need is the truth and the big picture of what the hell is to come, and that's really what, you know, we focus on. You know, we don't have to know for certain who the fuck is a CIA asset and this shit. You know, who gives a fuck? You know, the main thing is the main prophecies we're bringing out. You see. It says, O virgin daughter of Babylon, sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans. Again, this is going into America. For thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. See, so this is just America being brought from a pompous state down to a state of humility. Okay, getting off a throne. All right, get off your throne, sit on the fucking floor. All right, and when you visualize a woman doing this, you see it's very humbling. But it's representing the state of America. You see, it says, take the millstone, verse 2, take the millstone and grind mill, which is the lowest role in society. You know, that's why the scripture says, from the firstborn of Pharaoh down to her that is behind the mill, okay, or the servant behind the mill. So again, America being brought to a very low state. Reading on, it says, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the river. And the river is able now to see up this woman's skirt, right? See all her secrets. And that's also what the elder had brought out, that, you know, the Lord is making Esau bare. You see? All right? So these people that are bringing things out, whether it be Ryan Dawson, Jake Marfonio, Scott Ritter, Scott Horton, there's so many, Max Blumenthal. These are Edomites. Not all of them, but a lot of them have the appearance of Edomites, you know. The list goes on. Dabu 7, all these different people, you know. The scripture said that the Lord is going to make Esau bare. You know what I'm saying? So they could be organic individuals that are just doing their due diligence and bringing out all this stuff. Or they could be part of the agenda, but it's irrelevant, because the prophecy in terms of Esau being bare is being furthered. You know what I'm saying? You see? So that's what I'm saying, that the macro of the prophecies, what we're bringing out, are coming to pass. You know, and the elect will not be deceived on the macro state of things, on the major scale of things, because we're sticking to the prophecy of the scriptures. All right? Whether the micro shit, Trump assassination attempt, was it real, was it staged, it doesn't matter, you know, because that's all micro shit. That's just us speculating. We don't know. We don't know for 100% certain, you know. You know, and I can have my thoughts, another brother can have his thoughts, but try not to make a speculation fact, because you want what you're saying to be grounded on, okay, I know this for certain. You know, can prove this for certain, you know. But if you can't, hey, this is just my opinion. This is me speaking as a man, you know. And it kind of, like I said, it helps when you have that outlook, because when you put together your lesson, you say, look, I think this might happen, that might happen on a micro level. You know, it turns out to be a bit more accurate. I'm not saying it always is, but there's just a bit more accuracy, you know. So don't just rule out all information. You know, don't just fuck it, it's mainstream media. Mainstream. When 9/11 happened, didn't you know that the dancing Israelis was mentioned on Fox 5 News? You see, because not everybody knows what the hell is happening. I think an accurate representation of that is when you watch House of Cards. It really shows you how sometimes a psyop is going down, or sometimes a natural event is going down, and they don't even know what the fuck is going on. People at the top, you know what I'm saying? So Esau is not as coordinated as, you know, as we think. They're not as super coordinated. Like, I kind of think about it like, you know, like the organization that I'm in, I have an important role, right? But there's so many fucking departments that, you know, it's hard, you know, there's shit that goes down in the organization that you think like, oh, you know, you should know, but you don't know, because there's just so many different departments. Now imagine the American empire with all these different agencies, and, you know, there's a lot of shit that they just, you know, they all can't perfectly coordinate with, you know. 3, thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. Right, so the Lord set it up to where these elites will, and these so-called Jews, all the dirt, all that shit would come out, okay? Whether it be organically or a part of Satanism, which, you know, a part of Satanism and witchcraft is you have to tell the people what you're doing. That is a part of it, you know, because Satanism in a sense is not just giving you a poison apple, it's telling you the apple is poison and having you eat it, you know. That is in their thing. But like I said, don't have to concern myself with that 100%. I don't have to be 100% right on that. All I have to be 100% right on is that the Lord is going to make Esau bear, whether it's organically or using them to making themselves come out. That scripture was fulfilled, you see. It says, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. Right, so Yahweh Shai is coming back in his glory. That's what that means when he says he's not going to meet thee as a man, you know. Another thing that's that we have to consider too is what we speak about Project Bluebeam, right? That they're gonna have a false image of the Lord come back with holograms. That's something that they could have in the works, and the elect won't be deceived about that because they've been warned about that. Matthew chapter 24 verse 24. This is in the red letters. It says, for there shall arise false. They have Christ here, false anointeds and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders. Right, so, you know, with AI, with a lot of shit, you know, they could damn near do real life special effects to have people beguiled. You know, that's something you also have to look out for, man. They put a lot of Hebrew Israelite stuff via TikTok, and it's using AI and shit. So there will come a point, man, where this truth, just like how they're getting on the so-called Jew, they're gonna say, well, who are the real Jews? You know, it's gonna hit mainstream. You see? Now, when this truth hit mainstream, are you gonna say, oh, it's on mainstream media, so it's not true? No. Of course, when this truth does hit mainstream, okay, first starting with alternative media and then, you know, spreading out, you're gonna see that what? They're gonna be demonizing a lot of stuff we're saying. And the so-called white man is so subtle in the way that he knows that the news also has a lot of bullshit, that when truth come on the news, you don't know to filter it. You know, because when the Lord does have us hit the news, a lot of people are going to say, oh, they're not, you know, it's bullshit, you know, it's just news, you know. They're not going to really consider. Well, fuck them. It's going to be unto their own detriment. It says, shall show great sign and wonders, insomuch, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. So the elect will not be deceived on the more important things, if you will, you know, the macro prophecies, all right? The elect won't be deceived. You see? Behold, I have told you before. That's the main point I really wanted to make. So yeah, you know, we're being very skeptical. We scrutinize a lot, you know. and we're using our third eye, if you will, our spiritual eye. Let me not even say third eye, because but we do have that pineal gland, you know what I'm saying? That's what I mean by that, the spiritual eye that you read about in Revelations 3 and 18, your eye self, to what? To discern. Okay? Proverbs 14 and 15 says, the simple believeth every word, but the prudent man looketh well into his going. Right? And it's like I said, this is how come you can't even drink alternative media. You don't want to drink mainstream, you don't want to drink alternative, you want to sniff, smell, if it's correct information, use that, but don't get too crazy with that shit now. Our main thing is, does it support the scriptures? Does it support prophecy? You don't want to go too deep off the deep end, you see? But this is what we do. We scrutinize things. We understand that so-called white man does run a lot of psychological operations, to put the people in fear, to confuse them, and that's what the elder was bringing out. That's how come that guy, the shooter, for example, I said, was it a psyop? Was it organic? Truly, I do not know for certain, because guess what? People do fucking lose it. People do organically just lose it and do irrational shit, But from a prophetic standpoint, we know that the so-called white man could use these events, whether synthetic or organic, to further his agenda. For example, getting rid of long weapons, Really, they want to get rid of all weapons to make, when they roll down to that martial law, things will be a lot easier because people won't be able to defend themselves, all right? But the point is, we know this devil is subtle, and he will use situations with the synthetic or organic to further his agenda. Ephesians 5 and 15, it says, see then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, right? So, we constantly examining things, all right? And our main filter to make sure we're observing things with wisdom is scriptures. There's the scriptures. It's staying true to the scriptures. Sometimes shit gets so exciting, you kind of get wrapped up, and you hear some sort of news, and what happens is the news will fit the narrative of the lesson you want to do, right? So I don't know, you hear some shit, you're like, man, this is great for a lesson. You don't even take the time to do the due diligence. You're so hyped up in the information. It's so exciting, and then come to find out the information doesn't check out, or it was some AI shit, or it was some fake news. So there's stuff like that, and Esau knows that, man. Again, it just run in a constant state of getting your brain stimulated, all right, to not let you get from point A to point B. All right, so with that, I'm gonna give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashim Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim Rachak Kodash, the belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the whole elect out there, you Akim to Zadakim that do this thing in the most truth and sincerity. Shalom.